Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to get started now since it's 4:30, and want to thank you all for joining us today for this session. This is an opportunity to learn more about the factors that will be considered in making a decision about student uniforms at Riverside School. I'll just make a note, if everybody could make sure that their microphones are turned off during the presentation, that would be much appreciated. And just to let everybody know that we are recording this session, but it is just the presentation portion that we'll be recording, and we won't be recording the breakout discussions that we'll be having following the presentation. So my name is Karen Drummond, and I'm the Manager of Community Engagement at the CBE. And I'd like to introduce some of the other CBE leaders who are here with us this evening. So we have Melody Pelling, Education Director for Area 3. And that's the CBE area that Riverside School is part of. We also have Lisa Nachtigal, Education Director for Area 4. And Lisa also has responsibility for alternative programs, which includes the science program. Nancy, and I believe Annie Yu is also joining Nancy this evening, and so welcome to both of them. They're here for the presentation portion this evening, but they won't be sticking around for the breakout discussions. So just so you're aware of that. Myself and Adele Lowther as well, Community Engagement Advisor. So Adele will be helping to present as well as facilitating, and you'll also be hearing from Melody and Lisa this evening as well. Yeah, I think if we can move to the next slide. Before we get into the agenda and content for our session today, we want to acknowledge the land. So we're making this acknowledgement at the beginning of our gathering today to demonstrate our commitment to work together as a community in laying the foundation for reconciliation through education. We would like to acknowledge the traditional territories and oral practices of the Blackfoot Nations, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai. We also acknowledge the Tsuut'ina and Stoney Nakoda First Nations and the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. In terms of the agenda for our session, so we'll start with a brief presentation and then break out into smaller groups for discussion. And our presentation will cover the engagement process, background and current context. We'll also review the factors to be considered in decision making and talk about next steps. And at that point, after we've covered all of that, we'll move into some smaller group discussions. And if you have any questions, you can jot them down during the presentation and raise them in those breakout groups. Okay, in terms of the decision to be made, you've probably seen this before, but by November 2022, the CBE will communicate a decision about whether or not Riverside School will have student uniforms for the 2023-24 school year and beyond. This is a decision that will be made by education directors in consultation with superintendents and other CBE leaders. So this was shared out in the spring. And we do want people to understand that there's a variety of factors that will be considered in making this decision. So it's not as simple as a vote. There are other factors that need to be considered, and more that we'll share this evening in terms of what those are. And we'll also, I just want to make note before we get too far along too, that any of the comments that are shared this evening, we'll be sharing those out, a summary of what's provided in terms of feedback, as well as sharing out survey results and being transparent and showing out what we're hearing as we go through this process. So we invite those of you who are with us today and those who may watch this recording later to consider all of the information shared and to listen with an open mind. In terms of the factors to be considered, there's many factors that need to be considered, and we'll be seeking input from students, parents and guardians, as well as staff. And in addition to collecting input from these groups, we'll also consider how uniforms may or may not impact student learning outcomes, how they provide opportunities for a welcoming and caring learning environment that promotes diversity and inclusion. We'll consider alignment with the values and outcomes for the CBE Science program, and also how uniforms impact available resources at Riverside School. Of course, in any decision that we make, the CBE values will also guide us, and those are students come first, learning is our central purpose, and public education serves the common good. So those values will help support education directors in making this decision. And one of the main goals of this engagement is to ensure that participants have an opportunity to share their perspectives. So in terms of the work that we do in community engagement at the CBE, we have a dialogue framework which guides all of our community engagement activities. And so that framework and the values of dialogue will guide us in the work that we do. So those are inclusive. So preferences for engagement and communication are considered, and barriers are addressed wherever possible. Honest, listening and communicating in a clear, candid, and forthright way. Accountable, making the best decisions for students. Mutual respect, roles are understood and participants are open, respectful, and cooperative. And responsive, participants are provided with appropriate information in a timely way that allows them to provide meaningful input. So these values, these principles have guided us in developing this engagement plan and connecting with you on this decision about student uniforms at Riverside School. And for those who may be interested in learning more, you can visit our website. The address is listed there, and that will provide you with a little more information about dialogue at the CBE. And so that provides an overview of the engagement process. And now I'd like to hand it over to Melody Pelling to share a little bit more with you of the background, current context, and also she'll delve into some of the factors that we're considering in decision making. Melody?
Thank you, Karen. Good evening, everybody. If you're joining us recently, my name is Melody Pelling, and I'm one of the two education directors for Area 3. So we want to start by acknowledging that we have a lot of returning parents here this evening and guardians, but we also have some that are new to Riverside School. So we thought it was going to be really important to start with some background information about how we came to be here today. So as most of you know, Riverside School was renamed in the spring of 2021. And at the time of the renaming, the uniform policy was suspended due to the fact that uniforms bore the previous school name. Additionally, it was also highlighted at the time, the Riverside School was one of 6 sites where the science program is offered, but the only one where there was a uniform requirement. So at a school council meeting in June 2021, those who were present, it was shared that there would be an opportunity for parents and guardians to have input into the decision about the future of uniforms at Riverside School. We can go to the next slide. So a question about uniforms was included in the annual school planning survey, which is shared with parents and guardians each spring. The data collected from the uniform question this past spring was reviewed by Riverside School administration and education directors, me being one of them. Unfortunately, the way in which the information about the question was interpreted and shared was concerning. So after significant feedback was received, it was determined that an engagement process would take place. Survey results collected in the spring of 2022 will not be included in our decision-making process moving forward. The first factor we considered was that of impact of uniform policy on academic achievement. We did consult with Diane Gerlach, the Dean of Workland School of Education. Diane's research focuses on dress code, not uniforms. Dress codes generally refer to what students can and cannot wear, while a uniform policy ensures that all students wear the same attire. However, Diane has consulted with schools in our city and beyond who are reviewing their uniform policies. So it is noted that the articles shared by Diane with me, that uniforms have neither a positive nor negative effect on student academic achievement. And we can just proceed to the next. So on this slide, there are some parent and guardian perspectives about school uniforms. It's important to note here that positive perspectives shared by one person may be considered negative perspectives by another. So parent guardian perspectives about uniforms include, but are not limited to, so this is not an exhaustive list, that they are seen as a form of social equality, that they save time, that they reduce costs, they may reduce arguments with children about clothing, greater sense of camaraderie and belonging, symbol of quality and pride for a school. They limit choice for students. They may not be culturally sensitive. They may not be perceived as gender inclusive by all, and require enforcement. They can be an additional cost for families, and students are unable to wear the uniform, or students unable to wear a uniform look different than the rest of the student population. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, but are many of the items that we have heard. So if we can go to the next slide. The second factor to be considered is that the Calgary Board of Education's commitment to providing inclusive environments in all of our schools. We aim to provide respectful, safe, secure, and welcoming environments for all students, families, and staff, inclusive of physical ability, mental ability, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, cultural and linguistic diversity, race, ancestry, gender, religious beliefs, socioeconomic status, and family composition. And the third slide, the accommodating choices in clothing and general appearance, is part of respecting the identity of individual gender identities and gender expressions, comes from that document that we've got on the bottom there. And then the next slide, a little about available resources. So for this factor, we will consider that of resource availability. Should Riverside School have uniforms in the future, all sales would be done through an online platform, and school-based employees would not be part of the purchasing and distributing of uniforms in the process. So that kind of speaks to the human part of the human resource aspect. The second part is around the enforcement of a uniform policy, and that does take time and resource. So just note that school administrators do spend time enforcing a uniform policy, and this can take time away from spending time ensuring quality instruction is being offered. And over to Lisa.
Good evening, everybody. So the final factor to be considered in the decision is understanding how a uniform policy aligns with the values and outcomes of the CBE science program. Through the science curriculum, the science school program aims to foster critical thinking and problem-solving skills, develop scientific literacy, co-construct knowledge through a science lens, connect learners with scientific experts, study the natural world through extracurricular learning and community experiences through inquiry, and experiential learning and project work.
Thanks, Lisa. So in terms of next steps, online surveys for staff, students, and parents will be shared tomorrow and remain open until October 19th. In the survey, a link will be provided to the recording of this presentation, so those who weren't able to attend the session tonight can watch it before completing the survey if they wish. Students in grade 4 to 9 will have time in class to do the survey. However, participation is optional, and the survey results will be shared in a way that protects anonymity. The survey results, as well as the feedback gathered at this session, will be shared by November 15th. And in sharing the survey results, comments will be shared, and we only edit if there's any profanity, comments that identify individuals, or for any discriminatory comments. And a final decision will be shared by the end of November. So we'd now like to take some time to gather your comments and perspectives in 2 breakout rooms. So once you're in your rooms, you can share your thoughts by raising your hand virtually. There's a little hand raising icon there at the top of your screen. Typing your comment in the breakout room chat window, or posting to a digital whiteboard. And once we're in breakout rooms, we'll post the link to that whiteboard. We will be using the Jamboard for the digital whiteboard, and each group will have a link to access it. And please note that if you are using a mobile device, you may be asked to install Jamboard to post comments. So if you are on a mobile device and you don't want to install it, you can just post your comments in the chat or speak verbally. And if you let us know in the breakout room that you're not able to access it or post in the chat, we can write down and take some notes when you share your perspectives. And please keep in mind when sharing that the following principles will guide our discussions. Please share perspectives in a respectful way, speak one at a time, and balance airtime freely. Discussions and sharing will focus on the factors that guide decision-making. There will be time provided to discuss each factor, and they are impact on student learning, providing a welcoming and caring learning environment that promotes diversity and inclusion, alignment with the values and outcomes of the CBE science program, and available resources. So we won't be coming back together as a full group after our smaller group discussions. So we'll also ask, and we'll post a link to this in the chat as well, that before you leave this evening, if you could complete a session evaluation, that would really help us out, and it helps us plan future events like this and lets us know what you think about the session itself. So I'll post that link in the chat here in a moment. Yeah, so now, I'll just mention this too, that if any questions are raised and not answered in your groups today, we will post written responses on the Riverside School website by October 11th. So as we move into our breakout groups now, we just want to thank you in advance for your attendance here today and for sharing your thoughts and perspectives with us in discussions. So we'll just take a moment and we'll move into groups, and I will post that evaluation link in the chat for you.